We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hello and welcome to Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul and everything in between. We're here on LA Talk Live and I am one of your co-hosts, Del A.D. Jones. I'm a certified soul-centered life coach and a relationship and divorce recovery coach. And my co-host here,
I'm Debbie Carlin Boyle, and I am a certified personal trainer, fitness instructor, and a wellness coach. And today we're real excited. And that song, I just have to say, just got nominated today for an Academy Award. So thank you, Justin Timberlake, for providing our background theme music.
Yeah, good call, Debbie.
All right, today on our show, we have Dr. Stephan Poulter. I'm going to give you a little background on him. He's a licensed clinical and individual family psychologist. He's in private practice right here in West LA. He's worked with a multitude of psychological and life issues in a variety of settings. His background was he was a former police officer, a theological seminary graduate, and he has helped hundreds of family, including individuals and children of all ages, parents, step-parents, and couples. He's been providing these professional mental health services for clients for well over 35 years. Dr. Poulter is an author of over 9 books, including books on audio. He's a public speaker, and he deals with parenting, adolescence, and psychological issues. Today, we are going to talk to Dr. Poulter about one of his books called Your X Factor. Our goal today is to say that everybody is capable of a relationship. Dr. Stephan Poulter, thank you for joining us today.
Yay! Thank you. Welcome back. You were such a huge hit last time. We had to have you on again. We just brushed the surface. So
very sweet.
Excited
Thank
to
you.
go a little deeper this time.
We're going to drill down. Thank
Okay.
you, Debbie, for the intro. I'm with 2 experts, myself, with you too. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Well, it's ours, all ours.
Yeah, so I love the optimism of, doesn't matter what you've been through, how many so-called unsuccessful, I don't call them unsuccessful. I think every relationship is a success because you learned something from it. But as you were saying earlier, sometimes people feel that they just, because they have a series of broken relationships, that they just can't do it. And they're not good at relationships and they give up.
They assume that it's just inevitable, that it's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't believe there is failure in relationships. There's an old saying, you can be married many times, but you only get married once. You can be in many marriages or romantic relationships, but you really ultimately find a place where it works for you. For some of us, in marriage may be the first one. For many of us, it's the second. Sometimes it's the third or fourth marriage.
What about if there was death? What if you had a successful relationship and somebody died and then you went on to have another successful one?
That's fabulous. That's fabulous.
Two for two.
Yeah, you learn a lot about
really.
grief and how to let go. And but, it's interesting because we go from our childhood, which is our family of origin, and our whole game starts there. As adults, the game is in romantic relationships for 98% of us. The 2%, that doesn't apply to them, but we're going to talk with the 98% of us. It's intimate relationships that really is our iron on iron.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That kind of shape us, mold us. And disappointment, I talk about in the book, is one of the best kept secrets. Because we hear the word, oh, I'm disappointed. And it kind of gets dismissed, trivialized. But disappointment is a primary emotion. Anger is secondary. Disappointment's here. Anger covers up disappointment. A lot of men say, well, my ex-wife's angry. No, she's really not. She's disappointed.
Or hurt.
Deeply.
So when anger covers up disappointment, then anger tends to become something that you put into use.
Exactly.
Like you start to do things out of anger that you normally wouldn't do, but you're so disappointed that the anger takes over, and now you start to get revengeful. Should I say?
Yeah.
But with disappointment...
Or attack. You start to attack with anger. Is that correct?
But I think, for me anyway, I know a lot of people that go through breakups, and disappointment is such a sort of a mild emotion compared to devastation, distress. There's so many deeper emotions that sometimes can be under the anger. Disappointment sounds like, didn't work out.
Yeah, exactly. Disappointment, when you really feel it, you're not getting out of bed for a week. You're not going to move.
Disappointment.
Because disappointment embodies your dream, your values, what you believed, and what happened. Disappointment is, it's like saying the Grand Canyon has a couple valleys in it. No, if you're not careful, it'll kill you.
Wow.
Disappointment breeds emotional cancer, which is devastation, resentment, revenge. Disappointment is nuclear energy. But people think, it's nothing. It's contained. No, it's not.
Yeah.
I've never met a client who's thriving who hasn't dealt with their disappointment, because that's a core value.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I can relate to that now. I think I can identify what I feel now as disappointment. I'm disappointed that it didn't work out
Right.
better.
The way we hope.
It comes in many ways.
The word disappointment would have occurred to me at the time. I mean, I could give some much sort of,
Right.
like I said,
Stronger words.
Stronger
That's
words.
the anger.
No, it was pain. No, it wasn't. It was like things like devastation, much, but it's sort of different words.
Disappointment's a gentle word
Yes.
for what we've
Exactly.
kind of gone through in our
Disappointment doesn't have the firepower.
Yeah.
But it has the breaking power, because all those emotions are temporary. They're short-term solutions to a long-term problem.
Yes, exactly.
Unless you deal with the disappointment, that's the long-term issue. And also, disappointment tends to breed perspective. I got some perspective on myself, and that's detachment. Because when we're hot, another thing I see in couples counseling, when a couple comes in like two beagles fighting over a bone, they're not getting divorced. When they come in indifferent, Houston, we got a problem.
Yeah, really.
It's indifference that leads to breakups.
It's so true.
Not
I remember
fire.
I used to pray for that. That was the word I wanted. I would actually, when I'd write my intention is to be indifferent. I mean, truly, that was the word I used, because I didn't want to feel any heated emotion either way. I didn't want to feel love. I didn't want to feel anger. I didn't want to feel. I'm just talking now about the disillusion of my relationships.
But that's the recipe for demise if you feel indifferent.
Well,
Correct?
I'm
Because
talking
you're
about
not
the
dealing.
ones. No, I'm talking about the ones that are over.
Yeah,
So
no,
that I
that's
don't
what I
carry-
mean when
Right.
you said
Yeah.
that you wanted to be indifferent
but
and you
I
were
wanted
on
to
your
get
way
to
down.
to get to that place of indifference, because I knew that was a healthy place
It is.
to be.
It is.
Is to not have those attachments, whether they were love or anger or hurt or any of those emotions that kept me attached. It was like I just wanted to be indifferent.
Right. And when you're indifferent, I want to run this by. I say this to men all the time. They'll come to my office. Oh my God, my wife's left me. Do you think there's a chance she's coming back? How long? I always ask the guy, how long did she want you to go to therapy? Oh, we've been talking about it for years. And one day she left. And I always tell that guy, it's done.
She's not coming
It's done.
back.
Women will warn you. And when they're done, game's over.
Yeah.
It's the end of the fourth quarter. There is no overtime. Men don't believe it. And that I can't tell you how many men I've dealt with that issue. Whether it be dating, engagement, marriage, divorce. When a woman's done, it's done. And they get indifferent.
Yeah.
And woman's like, I'm done trying. And she's indifferent. I tell the guy, you're done. It's done.
And it always comes out of the blue to them.
Oh, yeah, always. Then they're like, well, why aren't you supporting relationships? No. I'm supporting the fact that you were sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And then you got hit by a missile, and then you're wondering why it blew the house up. No, you've been sleepwalking for 7 years.
Yeah.
And she one day said, I'm done.
And then all the hindsight
comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like to always play the gender card on this discussion, but on this discussion, it's a gender card.
Yeah.
It is.
It really is. And that's where disappointment comes in, because the woman has processed it. Because there's always one person leaving, one person staying. Usually the person leaving, not usually, always has a lot of courage. Say, this isn't working. Where the person being left can play the victim card.
Yeah, it didn't work that way for me.
No. Well, exactly. And a lot
But
of
it
men,
was a long time coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see it coming.
Yeah.
And when a woman says she's done, I don't really see ever that being unwrapped.
I'll challenge you on something. Just here, not challenge you, but bring up another scenario. There's been done and there's been done. I think in certain relationships, when there's like a lot of abuse, say, the attachment can still be there, the feelings of love can still be there. So they're not truly indifferent. They just, something happens, the abuse gets to a head where they just truly know they have to get out. And so they're still courageous because they're actually leaving, but they then need to do the processing that still the work. I mean,
yeah, I guess I wasn't talking about dangerous relationships. I was talking about more kind of
more general,
normal,
more
way.
mainstream, vanilla,
yeah.
vanilla type. You know, a dangerous relationship or abusive relationship, that's a whole different dynamic.
Yes, exactly.
Leaving because the house is on fire, figuratively or literally, is wisdom.
Yeah.
Self-preservation. That's different but then again, there's always that warning, if this keeps happening, I'm going to leave. And then it happens, and eventually the woman leaves, and no one believes it.
Yeah,
I mean, you think about the
exactly.
Tina Turner story.
Yeah.
What's love got to do with it?
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
I mean, I remember seeing that movie just going, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she reached a point, I'm done. It didn't matter. She didn't want the money. All she wanted was her name, and she left with the clothes on her back.
Yeah.
Right.
That is what I see in my practice.
Yeah.
When
No,
it gets to
exactly.
that point.
It's interesting because in my marriage, I had several times said, I'm done, but I didn't say it loud and clear enough. And I sort of had ultimatums in terms of whether or not we could stay together. One was to be into therapy, but there were other issues within our marriage that, I asked to have changed. And, again, hindsight, we had to work together on even those changes. But when he didn't do that and it didn't happen, in my head, I was done. But he ultimately was the one that walked away, knowing where my head was at. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's interesting because some people leave a marriage. I mean, they say it's done, but they don't actually leave. But they're emotionally done.
Yeah,
and the other
exactly.
person may act it out.
Exactly.
In divorce, there's always the petitioner and the defendant.
That's what happened with me.
Right.
Okay, I wanted to get to that
absolutely.
scenario.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, it's like the person that has the affair and gets caught intentionally, so that the other person will leave them because
Right.
they really wanted out, and they just they didn't have the courage to leave.
I talk exit strategies. That tends to be one that's like dropping a hand grenade in the family room and wondering why everyone's upset.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but much like when people die elderly, they talk about the 5-year decline. Relationships have the same graph. You can back it up on a spreadsheet and start to see the gradual decline. And when
if
they
you're
get-
not doing work along the
Right,
way.
if you're not sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And that
yeah.
goes for both
There's
people.
stages of relationships,
Absolutely.
correct? And we also have in marriage, we have, like our first act, second act, third act of marriage. And we kind of have to shift our ways of thinking on our lifestyle with our partner in each act, correct?
Yes.
Am I correct? And we don't always.
No,
Expectations change. And things, you kind of want that romantic first warm fuzzies that you had when you first started dating in the second and third act. And it's different unless you create it.
Exactly. You evolve.
You evolve. Exactly.
I mean,
So-
I think you have to work at it. I mean, that usually in the first year or two, it still requires effort. I mean, not effort as in hard work, but just really cherishing the other person and showing them how much you care. And
It's
keeping
considered
that
the honeymoon stage, though,
yeah,
isn't
but
it?
I think you can keep it going as long as you're conscious.
Absolutely.
You just have to keep
Yeah.
feeding it. It's like
That's-
anything. It
that's
doesn't exist on
true.
its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do one of the things I want to talk about today was what parent did you marry?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
that's in our notes.
I can get stuck on that one
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, because
Yeah, that's the thing that rears its ugly head with
Yeah.
every relationship you're in, and that's
Absolutely.
where you
If
have
you
to
are-
make your changes.
Yeah.
Correct.
If you're not, I was saying to you earlier when we were talking, and I said that, when you said everybody can have a successful relationship, and I totally agree, but it does require some effort on your part to go back and understand yourself and understand, like you say, just your relationship with your parents, because they are the first model of love for you, and what is unresolved, and if it's not resolved between you and your parents in therapy, it's going to be worked out in your relationships.
Right. And that's how family therapy was created by Salvador Minuchin and some of those psychiatrists. They said whatever parent you have the most problems with, you're going to marry them. Has nothing to do with gender. It's the energy,
exactly.
the way they communicate
The
emotion.
unresolved issues.
Right. You're going to marry that person. And
So knowing that up front, which we didn't in our first marriages, but knowing that up front, like we have kids, so we can stop them if we, I'm not.
No, I understand.
Stop them, but we could maybe, railroad them into the right. What do we do to go about? What's the process so you don't marry that parent? Is what I'm asking.
I think what we just talked about.
I agree. I think therapy is very important. I think part of it is realizing what the issues are between you and that particular parent. And we seek that part, what we seek in that partner is what we never got from that parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
For instance, for men, it might be nurturing, and they tend to marry their mother, which to me is a closed, it's a closed cycle. It's it hits a ceiling because it's very hard to marry your mom and to have sex with her.
Yes.
Sounds horrible.
Well, wait a minute.
It's
even worse if you're male to marry your father and try and have sex with him.
We're going nowhere.
Either one, parental and child nullifies sex.
Absolutely, it really does.
I know.
And I have couples that come in, like, when did you guys have sex? Well, we don't remember. I'm like, okay, who's the parent?
Yeah.
Who's the parent in the room? Someone's a parent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because that dynamic, the physical, sexual, is communication. And taking that third or that portion out of the relationship, it's a hard bridge to cross.
Yeah.
So
it's
if
so true.
I'm sorry.
I have to say, and I don't talk about my marriage in particular for reasons of just my children and everything.
Sure.
So I generalize in my relationships, and I've had a lot of relationships. I'm in one now for the last 7 years, which is amazing. But the relationships I had prior to that, including my marriage, I did notice that when there was any man that was controlling or parental with me, or it just nullified. It felt yucky to me. I couldn't go there in the end. It was just that control, and equally so, I was never attracted to, especially a lot of women that go through a divorce in their late 40s or 50s of somehow attracted to these really young guys, and I couldn't go there either because I felt parental to them. So it's very, very clear to me that I only feel right when I'm with another adult,
a partner
that treats and respects me, and vice versa.
But is the average person as conscientious as you are? I mean,
I don't even
to
think
not
it's
make
conscious.
those.
It just happens that way. As soon as I start feeling repulsed, it's like, oh yeah, I'm feeling repulsed because.
But you're identifying why.
Exactly.
And you can do that. That's it being evolved. I think whereas the average person, I'm not sure is that evolved to identify that and could get back into a bad situation.
Do you know? It's interesting. I've had a lot of women that go through divorce, and I find that sometimes they go this way, being they don't date or marry forever. And I spoke to a woman, I'll never forget this, like a year ago at the gym. We're both on the treadmill, and she asked me what I did, and I told her. And she was, I got divorced, and she was talking, and I thought it was recent, like 2014 or 15. No, it was 1993.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
She spoke as if it was present day.
And she hadn't dated at all since 1993.
No, maybe one or two dates.
Wow.
Now, where men sometimes jump horses midstream.
Absolutely.
And they'll go the other way, will date compulsively as a way.
Because they feel like they have freedom, or
no, it's to cover up the wound.
Yeah.
Oh,
where
okay.
either end isn't healing.
No, exactly.
Isolating or overindulging versus the middle is allowing the process to unfold.
Yeah.
Right.
And dealing, because disappointment is the mother of all invention in terms of emotion. Because if you're dealing with your disappointment and you bring it down, you can deal with your anger. You can deal with the betrayal. And your responsibility, how we got here. How do we get here? What's my role in this? I always say it's like tennis. It takes two.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Takes
to
two
hit the
people
ball to
Yeah.
get
to
play
back over
tennis.
the.
Or the other
to get
one
over
is
the net.
water always finds its equal. You can never
Exactly.
be healthy with an unhealthy partner. I mean,
Right.
I 100% own that. I was not healthy, and I was even warned. I mean, somebody said to me, "You're not ready for marriage," and I was like, "Yes, I am. I've done so much work, and I'm in my early 30s." And I wasn't as healthy, obviously, clearly as I am today. I've had so much therapy over the years, but I still, I thought I'd done enough, and I hadn't. I was still operating on an old wound.
You know, and see, I go another way, thinking you were ready, because if it wasn't for that relationship, it wouldn't have bumped you to where you are today.
Absolutely. When I say that, yes, I mean ready as in what I call. Now, it was a perfect relationship for me. Like you said, it was
the time.
perfect for me at the time. Obviously, I have two beautiful children from it, and I learned a lot, and I really got to see myself and really understand myself to a degree that, yes, a relationship, any other relationship would maybe not have helped me get that far in my,
Right.
on my path. The other thing I always say is, if it hadn't have been my ex, it would have been somebody exactly like him, because that's the lesson I needed.
Yeah.
I was attracting that scenario to come to me.
That's like your most recent book, The Art of Successful Failure.
Exactly.
You know, meaning that we have to
Yeah.
come through to these things to get to a better place.
You know, in romantic heartbreak is, for a lot of people, getting hit by lightning. Maybe in their 30s or their 40s, and it changes their life, and it opens them up.
Or their 50s.
Yeah, their 50s, you know.
Yeah,
You know, I want to say,
an earthquake.
if you want to be part of this discussion and check and get in on what Del and I are asking our questions, and you have a question, give us a call on our line here at area code 323-473-3100. And if you'd rather ask a question on our Facebook page, you can go to Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul on Facebook, and go ahead to the comment section. We're looking at it right now, and you can go ahead and ask a question that way, and you don't have to leave your name. We won't say it on air. We just will, try to answer,
Sure.
make you part of this conversation, because we've got the expert here now. So
What-
sorry, I didn't
That's
mean to
okay.
interrupt you guys.
Yeah.
I forgot to say it at the top of the show.
You know, I don't consider myself an expert, but I appreciate that.
I
Because,
consider you an expert.
Yeah,
you're very
Listen,
sweet.
it's helped me.
I think more is that in real time, for men, and to a lot of guys, you don't want to be that guy. Who's that guy? Spends the rest of his life resenting his ex-wife or his ex-girlfriend. Don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of men in my practice, they think I've lost my mind, because I'm like, you are instilling cancer into your body, emotional.
Absolutely.
And
Oh,
you're, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So bad.
at the end of the day, you're going to think, did it really matter?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the other thing I was going to say, which I think is a huge responsibility, is if you have children, if you carry around that hatred and resentment, I mean,
They know it.
Well, two things. Number one, they're half of the other person.
Right on.
50-50. So if you have anger and resentment and hatred towards your ex, your children feel that you are rejecting half of them. And number two, I mean, my biggest fear is my children would ever say, "Oh, I don't want to get married," because I just say it because they think it's a failure, and it doesn't have to be a failure. It was a learning experience.
Exactly.
It didn't last, but it was something that in the end taught you probably the biggest lesson you needed to learn in your lifetime or on a soul level. And I would want my children to have the experience I had of living a full life, having been married, having children. I'd want the same for them. And I think if you walk around with bitterness and resentment, they're clearly going to go, I don't want to go there.
You know, to that point, there used to be, up until maybe less than 10 years ago, there was this whole thing about divorce and the damage it does to children. That's been defunct. What they're realizing now, it's not marital status that messes up children. It's marital strife that disrupts children's development, self-esteem, ability to function in the adult world. Now, there's a thing called a good divorce. There are many couples that are divorced but still live together,
Yes.
Yeah.
and they look like they're married.
Yes.
And they are. But it's
For the kids' sake, mostly.
or just for a lot of reasons.
yeah,
But yeah,
financial.
yeah.
not
But I
setting
find
up
what
two
you said to that
households.
point about marital tension, marital stress, that messes up children. People think, well, we're still, but I have couples in my practice with kids, the parents are like it's like the Middle East. They're bombing each other all the time.
Yeah, verbally.
Bombs,
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then invariably, children take sides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they do.
they take sides
start
because
to
they
feel for
try
another
to
parent.
level the playing field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, I have children that are of marriage age, and I would be remiss to say that they are not hesitant, to go into that sanctuary of marriage and wonder, will it last? Because my oldest daughter, who lives with her boyfriend, and they've been together well over 9 years, he comes from parents that have been divorced twice. His mother's been divorced twice. His father's been divorced once from his mother, obviously. And then what my daughter saw me go through, I mean, they're sitting back going, marriage doesn't look pretty to us. And I've seen too many wicked things. And it hurts me. I feel really sad about that, as you well know, because they'd be a beautiful family. They love each other. They would, love their children and set up house, but they are very hesitant to move forward in my book. And I know why. They've talked about it with me, actually.
Yeah.
So
I want to raise to that point, Debbie. It's really good about how do you go forward and try to minimize the damage?
from
Therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy.
Sorry.
Del,
We have to work on ourselves,
We have to work on
obviously,
ourselves.
and that's the steps that this book helps
Right.
you do,
And
that's
the
what
X
we
factor.
should. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was repeating myself all the time. That's why I wrote the book. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, the valley of despair. Okay, this happened. You start to recover. Then what's the next chapter of your life going to look like?
Right.
And declaring war against your ex is never a solution.
Right.
Well, actually, I was just going to say, but
Yes.
when I said therapy, I was sort of joking. But I have the biggest library of self-help books in the world. And my therapist would laugh. He thinks I'm the most well-read person. But actually, self-help books, I think, are amazing for two reasons. Number one, the education. But when you read these books, you go, oh, my God, I'm not alone.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
a freak. The feelings I feel are valid. They're shared by many people. And that's the way that you can start to process and work through your emotions, and especially with a book like this, because it's interactive, and you give people tools to help them to process it and you describe the stages of the grief. I'd love you if you could do that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that that's how we met. It was because I was given this book by a mutual friend of ours, and I read the book, looked on the back. Oh, look, he's local in Los Angeles. And I gave him a call, and I went in and I said, you know what, I read this book and it really helped me. But I need the work. I'm not, I need help with the process. And this is such a valuable tool for some, so yes, we should definitely
let's touch on, I know there are stages you break the book up into 3 parts. The first part being the emotional wreckage.
Right.
And the second part, your relationship style, and then the third part is beyond the blame and the tension. But let's just start with the emotional wreckage. Just identifying those stages of that and how people.
In the first stage, what I find to be consistent. When I mean consistent, is shock. Even though you could see it coming, like rain clouds off the coast, and then it rains in your life for 2 years, and you're thinking, is it ever going to lighten up? But the shock is a legitimate stage.
You call it emotional whiplash,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It is emotional. It is a whiplash. It's as if you in a car accident.
Well, it's
And
also it's a death. It's a death
Yes.
of a life that you knew, and there's the grieving processes of death. Oh my goodness!
Are we there?
We're getting
to
there.
a break. Just to a break. We're not
Okay.
done. We're not done.
Yeah, we're not done, but we'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we're going to pick up where we left off. We're
remember
going to talk about
emotional whiplash and
Yeah,
how to
the-
pick up from there, how to go from there.
If
We're
that's
going
all
to
we
take
talk-
it each step.
If that's all we talk about today, we've done well.
No, we got to go all the way through these
Okay.
3
We will.
stages.
We'll go.
Well, again,
We'll accelerate.
If you want to call in, you have the information, 323-473-3100. If you would like to talk to the wonderful Dr. Stephan Poulter.
We'd love to hear from you, and we'll be right back. Just give us 2 minutes. We'll see you right back here.
We know there are many many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Thinking money changes everything. But you're so different the way you...
Hi, this is Starlet Quarles, and I'm inviting you to join us every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. Join us as we discuss the topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. So don't forget to tune in to The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People, every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city, off from my home. We're flying up no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket.
Welcome back. We're Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, and Soul, and everything in between. We're the talk show that helps you to live your best life. And we are having a really dynamic discussion right now with Dr. Stephan Poulter. We are talking about one of his books that is just, I can't recommend it enough. It's called Your X Factor. And if you've ever been in a relationship that ended, this is the book for you. And we're going to pick up where we left off.
Yes.
We were talking about emotional whiplash. So if we can go from there when a relationship ends and that's how we feel, like we've just been spun around and we're just emotionally, don't have a grip. Believe me, I've been there on what just happened. How do we go from there?
Well, it's interesting. When I use the word emotional whiplash, it's as if you're going down the 405 freeway and you're at a stop and all of a sudden you get rear-ended. Mm-hmm. Everything stops. And emotional whiplash, in psychology, we call it a psychogenic fugue. And you mentioned earlier, Del, when people get revengeful, crazy, things happen. Psychogenic fugue it's as if you step out of yourself and become somebody else. That's the whiplash. Crimes of passion. Yeah. That is the whiplash. The whiplash is your life just got flipped, and you start acting and behaving in ways you never imagined. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can't believe I'm going to tell you this story. I'm like, okay, it's like I'm really dating myself. It's the summer of 1970, and my mom sends me to a reading clinic. I want to go to that like I want to get root canal for reading. So I go there, and my counselor each week, I'm looking at her, lovely looking woman, and each week I'm realizing like her eyebrows are disappearing. And then her hair, it looks like she's losing hair. So finally I ask her, I'll just say her name, make up a name, Miss O'Brien, is everything okay? And I'm like, 10. And she goes, I'm getting divorced. Oh. And I go, are you dying? I mean, like a 10-year-old.
Sure, that's how she was feeling.
She goes, yeah, why do you say that? I go, and this is 10, unedited, like boys, priceless. I go, well, I notice your eyebrows are like disappearing, and your hair part keeps getting wider, and like it looks like you're losing your hair. She goes, I am, son. I went, wow.
That's really wow.
Wow.
Yeah, stress.
When you say
stress hormones will make you lose hair.
Everything. So when I say whiplash, I remember Mrs. O'Brien just looking at her.
Yeah.
I go, are you dying? And she looks right at me. Wow. Yes. Mm. I went, okay, so was I supposed to read Tom Sawyer?
I don't want to. This is too much for me. I'm too young.
I remember thinking, I came home and read. My mom's like, what happened to you on the way? I go, Mrs. O'Brien's dying. And anyway.
And in Tom Sawyer today.
I mean, it was like the Foothill Reading Clinic. I remember watching this woman, and she was like my parents. She's in her 40s. I remember just looking at her like it was noticeable to me. And I'm just like, I'm coming in once a week in the afternoons. And I remember, and after that, she was always very sweet to me. But after that, she was very, like, I'm not dying.
Yeah.
I go, okay, good.
Just feels like I am.
I remember thinking, I can't wait for the summer to end.
Well, let's talk about that and that
As
feeling.
kids.
You know, that feeling that happens when you are turned around and in that phase, because we have this joke, the divorce diet. When you see somebody whose relationship ended, instantly I lost 10 pounds. And I don't
Not
really
everybody
have,
loses 10
well,
pounds.
Well, there's other divorce diets.
Other
one
way,
where you
it
gain
could
10
go
pounds.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Diet doesn't necessarily mean the
Well,
going down. It could
yeah,
go up.
I mean,
I went on the downside because I was in that couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe for a little bit.
yeah.
So, how do we avoid that? How do we get through that? How do we turn it around?
This sounds odd, and I talk about it in the book. In business, there's things called renewable contracts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a lot of courage to say, honey, we're not talking. We need to go talk. I think, because men ask me all the time, how do I know my marriage is okay? Take your wife out, not out to dinner, but take her away and let her talk to you for a while. Well, she won't talk to me. Well, just sit there and be quiet, because she will talk.
Do that in my practice, yeah.
She'll talk to you eventually.
Yep.
And it may take 3 or 4 tries, but eventually she'll realize you're trying, and that in itself will get the logs moving down the river.
And also, I think if you really articulate that it's safe to
Right.
share.
Thank you, Del. Yes.
Yeah.
Something that all these points we're making, that's the baseline.
Because I always
If it's
thought
not safe, nothing's good.
Nothing's going to be said. Yeah.
At that point, you're just in an exit mode.
I was always afraid to go that deep. So I always thought, I was always under the impression, and I bet there's people in our audience who can relate to this, that if I stayed my ex's girlfriend, that I'm talking about my husband of 26 years, but if I stayed his girlfriend throughout the marriage, then he wouldn't. I was always so worried about affairs and strain that as long as we had intimacy, that we would have longevity. And I was really misnomer, really, because that's one only aspect of it. And what you're saying is much more important, and we didn't dig deep into that.
I think the simple fact that, to identify as a girlfriend as opposed to a wife, what I read by that, and you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but that's almost saying needless and wantless. I'll just be there to keep
Well, that's
you
how
happy.
unevolved I was, from an
Because of
emotional relationship standpoint. I didn't know those things.
Because it's almost implying that girlfriends don't sort of that they're just girlfriends. They're not wives, so they don't have a right to sort of have a voice in this relationship. And it's almost just implying being a little submissive. So therefore, you would never have shared what you really wanted. And you wouldn't want to, disturb the waters. But
exactly. That was my block. That was my deal, was that, as long as I stay pretty, and as long as I keep my weight in check, and as long as I can be somewhat eye candy, he won't go find eye candy. Somehow I was under the misnomer that my relationship would stay secure if I did those things, but I didn't go deep, and I didn't go to the next step.
I'm fascinated. I have to go a little deeper here. So that I want to go back for a second to how you grew up, how your parents' relationship, because you bring that up in the book too. Yes. So I would ask Debbie, what was your mother and father's relationship like for you to decide that was how to keep a man happy?
Debbie, do you want me to jump in for you?
Yes.
I'm going to jump in.
My mother was having affairs on my father.
Okay.
So I felt like, and I was listening to a lot of talk radio and a lot of things. A lot of people were breaking up, and and Dr. Laura has the saying, always, stay the girlfriend. But there's so much more to it. But I just heard that part.
And well-intended. Okay. Let me just throw this out to you. Good question, Del. Every son doesn't want his father to leave because he doesn't want the responsibility of his mother. That's why women ask me, why does my husband always have all these affairs? I believe 50% of it for men is that they were suffocated by their mother growing up and their dad wasn't around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hands down.
100%. Oh, my God.
When I first started seeing this in my practice, in my own life. Because when I was 15, my dad went on an odyssey for 10 years and left me with my mom. I remember thinking, oh boy, really? Now?
Can I ask you, in
Yeah.
your practice, do you see the majority of marriages breaking up because of affairs?
No, not at all. Because
What's
they
the
don't.
number one reason? Can you, just...
I don't mean. I don't. I know Adele's smiling.
No,
I
I'm
don't.
smiling because I read it in the book.
Yeah.
The affair is not the cause.
Not
it's
at all.
I know,
it's
that's
the-
why I'm asking, because I want our
No,
audience to know.
I find that now I would amend what I wrote in the book, but it's still the same. It's if you're not communicating emotionally, mentally, not just verbally, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, hence the continental divide, because you're growing apart.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find ways to grow together
Yeah.
and make room for each other and the differences.
So hence, there's an affair, or there's a financial collapse because you're not communicating.
You know, by the way,
on
in
all levels.
affairs, many times I've seen jumpstart a marriage.
Well, I just want to
a wake-up
clarify
call.
something here too. There's a difference between because I know there's this thing where people say, well, an affair is a symptom of the marriage. There's something missing in the marriage, and therefore somebody's having affairs. And I just think that, just to clarify a little bit here, that's not always the case.
No.
Some people are compulsively out having affairs, and it's not because they're not getting their needs met in their marriage. It's simply that's the way, either culturally or the way they were shown by their father or what mother, that they think it's their right to just have this thing on the side, and it's only sex, and it's not emotional, it doesn't impact the family.
I'm smiling
Why?
because
That's the
it's
difference.
chronic affairs is unequivocally, I'm going to go out and stick my neck out here, it's fear of intimacy.
Yeah, 100%.
'Cause you could-
Absolutely.
Because you don't have to get that
Exactly.
deep with
You
one
don't
person.
drill down.
You just
Yeah.
keep
Right.
moving.
You
Yep.
keep that third party. And I say if you have a third party, have it be a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, sorry, if you're going to have a tripod, have it be a therapist.
Yeah. Totally.
Or the hobby you do together. You know, don't make it the kids. Because when the kids hold a marriage together and that empty nest syndrome kicks in, the house collapses
Yeah.
in many, many ways. But Del, I have found that men who have chronic affairs, I mean, like compulsive,
Yeah.
they had a horrendous relationship with their mother.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
not seen men that do that come from a very safe relationship with their mom. Whether they were left with her, their dad died, or they never knew their dad, or something happened.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely, I can say that too. I can look back on people I know that are like that, and it's definitely one of those two things: either an overbearing mother, or even a lack of a mother.
Right.
Too.
Lack of a mother.
Lack of a mother.
In my practice, people ask, is the majority of my clients have affairs men? No, I find about 50-50. But I find the reasons for women is much different than the reasons for men.
Interesting.
What do you think
I
the
can
reasons
see
are?
that.
Yeah, with women, I'm not quizzing, but what you think?
Well, you know what? I would like to say, this is what I would assume the answer was, that for men it's just to have their ego stroked and to have sexual satisfaction, and for women it's more intimacy. But you know what? I know a lot of women that also need their ego stroked.
This is
And
probably
it's
a
about-
combination of the two,
it's
though.
to get the
Yeah.
attention that their husbands are not giving them, the validation.
Well, you want to start, as we get older, after we bear children and we're sort of running around and doing the mommy thing, and not everybody gets to the mommy thing, but even still, you start to feel like you've raggeded down a little bit, if you will, and then somebody suddenly pays attention to you, and then your flirt goes on, and before you know it, there's something more to it because somebody's paying attention to you that you're not getting at home. And then all of a sudden it breeds, something
Yeah.
bigger.
I
And
know,
that's what I would guess because that's what I see.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're both correct. But
Did we
I
answer
find
correctly?
a lot of women in my practice will have these torrid affairs. When I say torrid, reckless,
Oh yeah.
because it's an exit strategy.
Oh.
It's a major exit.
So do people want to get caught when
Yes.
they're having affairs? Is it a way for them to get out?
I mean, I have clients who will. I've had clients in the past who had affairs, and it's airtight because they don't want to get caught. I say, well, eventually, you got to make a decision. This
Yeah.
can't. You can't live parallel lives and think that's going to end well. But many times people have affairs, and they don't want to get caught. And generally speaking, they don't because they don't want to get caught. Unconsciously, I find a lot of women, they want to get caught because they know that will get their husband to move.
Oh.
They'll get their husband to move.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
I have to say, in my younger days, before I was married, and I was a serial relationship person, and I think I did that. I would sort of, my exit was to sort of meet somebody else, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I feel really bad about that. But it would be, oh my God, I've met somebody else. I have to leave. It
Right.
wasn't. I could never maintain two relationships at the same time. But I was definitely one of those people that jumped from one to the next and used that as an exit.
But isn't it human emotion, just or just human nature, to want to feel wanted and to want to feel validated? And depending on the type of person that you're with in your marriage, if you marry a narcissist, let's say, and they're so busy making sure they're constantly feeding their narcissism, and you're sort of standing on the side, you're not feeling very wanted. And so there gives you the need to kind of, you can feel wanted by your kids or in your work,
Right.
but not from a romantic standpoint. So then you start looking for that feeling.
But I also think I think you also have to ask yourself who you are to get in the relationship with a narcissist, because I would say that woman that might say, "Well,
parent?"
well, not just a parent,
but what parent was the narcissist?
but also, yes, we all do want to be loved and appreciated and accepted.
Right.
But I guarantee you, there's an awful lot of men out there that would love to love and honor and appreciate you, and a lot of women don't go for those men because they are attracted to that unavailable man. And that's when you have to go back again and look into your childhood and understand what parent was not there for you. Why are you still seeking that unavailable love? Why are you attracted to the narcissist? Because and that's where
it's interesting because that to me is like driving over the hill into the San Fernando Valley. There's another 3 million great issues there, because codependence is I'm more interested in your life than you are.
Yes.
In a narcissistic relationship, there's a theory where two narcissists can cohabitate, but man, it gets brutal. But generally, one's a narcissist and the other one holds the mirror up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the one that holds the mirror up, if they drop that mirror momentarily, in starts the fighting.
Yeah. Or if it's like, oh, hang on a minute, look, there's me.
Right.
There's no room
they
for
suddenly
me.
they
There is
suddenly
no room
find
for me
themselves.
in that relationship.
And that's codependence.
Yes. Totally.
And the codependence is I'm going to fix you in hopes that you're going to return the favor, versus having it be equitable. Because if it's equitable, a narcissist can't exist.
Well, it's not. I mean, the codependent, I know they like to fix others, but they also, I think they get a lot of satisfaction out of being the chosen one. I'm so special that you chose me. Okay, you treat me like shit, but I'm still the chosen one to everybody else that looks in on the marriage. So therefore, I'm going to endure this because I feel so not enough in my own light that I'm just going to just hang in there and hope it gets better and keep working like hell to make it better.
Absolutely, because codependence to me is, along with shame, is so misunderstood. Because codependence with your children is really good because you help nurture them and raise them. But in your romantic relationship, sometimes it can be the kiss of death.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can just torpedo the relationship because you miss so many road signs.
So going back then, and after we all this happens to us at the end of a relationship, can we talk about picking up the pieces in the next 10 minutes or so?
Absolutely.
And all the steps that we have to do that, depending on what the situation was that you're picking up the pieces from. I think that might be able to help
Absolutely,
people.
how to go forward.
Yeah.
Because part of it, going forward, forces you to take, I always say the first step after the whiplash is, in anger will help motivate you to make certain changes. But kind of like the third part is, where's your role in this?
Absolutely.
What role did you have in it? And when someone said it's 100% their fault, the other person's fault, I'm like,
Then you can't change it.
Right. I said, I wish that was true, because then they could change it. But it isn't.
Yeah.
You have to own 100 of your 50.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. And people that do that tend to do very well. They recover.
Yeah.
And they grow from it, and their life journey gets much more colorful. But as long as they're not willing to take that 100 of their 50, that it's like they get in a rut.
Because you're in the blame game.
Oh, you're in the blame game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I talk about that. Accepting responsibility for your role moves you away from blame.
Mm-hmm.
Because
because you can just say, well, because like I say, in my unhealthy relationships, I'll call them. I had some wonderful ones too, but a blanket statement about the ones that weren't working out. I mean, like I said, I was as unhealthy as they were unhealthy.
Right.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be there.
Right.
If I'd been healthy, I would have got out.
Exactly.
Earlier.
Or you would have gotten
I
in.
wouldn't even got in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to own your part of what got you there.
Right.
And
And
anger,
recognize.
people think, well, anger really motivates them. And I'm saying that's like drinking Red Bull, and thinking that's the only thing you need to eat or drink. It'll get you moving for a while, but it's also going to leave you
Done.
bankrupt.
Yeah.
Emotionally bankrupt.
Yeah.
I think it's really, I used to do a lot of work with Debbie Ford and the shadow work. And I remember her saying, we really worked on our shadow and our shadow emotions that we would normally judge as bad or shouldn't have them and things like that, anger being one of them. And she used to say it's like putting ice cream on top of a pile of warm, you can imagine. So the bottom line is, I think it's really important to feel the anger and in a safe place express the anger. And by safe, I mean either in therapy or somewhere where it's not lashing out on other people, but to go through it, because to go through it and to release it rather than deny it.
Yeah, very cathartic, probably.
I'm all about getting in touch with anger under one condition only, that it leads you to dealing what is it that you wanted that didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anger has to lead to action.
Yeah.
If we're just emoting, we realize now that just emotes more. There's no resolution. But if we deal with our anger, because underneath the anger is what didn't happen.
Yeah, the disappointment.
What I'm really
the
the
pain.
disappointment. But under the disappointment is like, what was I hoping? We're going to stay together, see the grandchildren. Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that gets to responsibility. What was my role in this? And once you get there, you start to accept that the person across the table from you isn't the enemy. It's like we ran our course, and here we are.
Yeah.
And then that allows you to go, okay, what's the next chapter of my life going to look like? What's love going to look like? What do I really want? What are my non-negotiable traits?
And that's something that you have to really dig into, right?
Yeah.
Like almost like a laundry list on
absolutely.
what you want. So you're really careful when you do start back on the dating scene that you don't make the same mistake. Because that, and you try to identify, don't remarry that parent again, or don't, settle for that parent again.
Yeah.
And where you played your part and erase that part of it, make your list of criteria, if you will. Right?
When we buy cars in California, there's a cooling off period of 72 hours. Okay? And there should be a cooling off period after the divorces. It's 6 months in a day.
That's the 6 month.
No. Well, they think that. I understand why they legislated that. No fault divorce was to get away from character assassination. Okay. So, but once the divorce is finalized, I'm talking signed and sealed. Usually, ideally, there's a 3-year cooling off period before you remarry or jump into a long-term exclusive marriage type relation. That doesn't mean you can't date. But the cooling off period allows you to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
Or not.
Well, it's like when people get into, programs, they 12-step programs. I think they say don't
for a year.
Yeah, for a year.
Right, the cooling off period. So you realize, what's this all about? I just walked out of this tornado. What's going on?
Yeah.
I don't want to make that same mistake.
Right.
Well, and we only have a little time left, so I really want you to share your book again, share where they can get it, give us your website and everything, and then we'll just wrap up with some. I know we've got a little while to go, but I just want to really make sure that people leave here with what the intention of the show was, that relationships are possible for everyone, that it's not impossible, but you do have to do the work. And as we were saying, the X Factor is an incredible way to start that work. It will really help you identify. Again, it's not to blame you. It's the blame shouldn't go either way. You don't want to be blaming yourself or blaming your partner, but you just really understand, what got you to this place, and to take the gifts from it. There's always a gift, and that's the blessing. and to continue learning and to take that step again into another relationship. So
we were talking about that there is no shortcuts to intimacy. And I want to just briefly touch upon somebody getting into a relationship for the very first time, a very, more serious relationship. The dating phase is over. And so we're talking probably maybe someone in their 20s who's just, because I think we're talking a lot to people who we have assumed have been in a long-term situation or divorced. But I also really quickly, if you could just mention to the fact, how do they set themselves up for a lifetime of a good relationship and happiness? All these steps, which is what we should have taken before we got into this situation. But
it sounds trivial, but writing down what 5 traits you want in a partner, and then write down 5 traits that you have as a partner. It sounds easy, but it really illuminates what you want and what you need and what you really are moving toward.
That works no matter whether it's the first relationship or whatever.
It always works.
Phase
you're in. It always works. It always lends itself to insight.
Yeah, good one.
In professional sports, they do player evaluations, like a 5-angle evaluation on any particular player they're investing millions of dollars in. It's the same approach to our intimate relationships.
Oy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm laughing here. I have to share because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what would have been my 5 things if I'd written them when I was younger? You know what it would have been? I mean, and I'm serious now.
Yeah.
It would have been somebody that doesn't smother me. Somebody that's sort of. I used to love the tall, dark, handsome, reserved. I mean, gosh, what was that?
The mysterious.
The mysterious,
turret.
The Heathcliffs, the misunderstood. I mean, I was just such a victim of growing up without a father that I really genuinely wanted an absent man. I mean, I knew I wanted to have passion, and the only way I felt passion is if you were either sort of just different and artistic and unavailable. And I mean, I would have probably put all those things down on my list.
When you were younger, so for a younger person, not to put the wrong stuff down on their list.
Okay, I want to jump right. So for instance, there's a thing called "What Makes You Feel Loved," and there's the book out, the languages of love, love languages.
5 languages. I
always tell couples, it doesn't matter what your age is. If what makes me feel loved is getting notes, then clearly, if I don't get notes, I'm going to feel unloved. And many times, men think the way I make my partner feel loved is I'm going to take care of her, and that may be true. But what about communication? What about spending time together, talking? Those are all big elements. And part of that 5 things you write down: what makes you feel loved?
Yeah.
What particular action makes you feel loved?
I like that one. That's good.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I remember reading that book. It's really interesting. It's like one of them was the talking, physical affection, doing odd jobs around the house, gifts,
and
notes.
Also, it was very I don't want to say it sounded very simplistic, but it is not, because many times couples text each other. Now, one person may find that irritating, the other person thinks it's adorable, because that gets back to notes.
Yeah.
Feeling like you're taking time out to be with me or talk to me. Connection. Another issue is, what's your style of intimacy? I like that gets into a lot, but some people, the intimacy is, I don't want to be any closer than 3 feet. Some people want to be glued on the hip. Other people prefer to be bi-coastal emotionally. It's important to know what's your style. What are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah,
that's a big one.
It's really
what's your style of
important.
intimacy?
Yeah.
And in my 20s, I'm like, are you? What?
Yeah.
Intimacy? She likes me. No, that's not intimacy.
Yeah.
And I think another is what communication. I'm not talking about style, languages of love, intimacy, but how does communication work for you? It sounds simple, but like in your family, did they yell, not talk, silent treatment, or no treatment? That's a big one.
Yeah.
And those you got to work on, and how to make sure that you're on the same page with your significant other on how to communicate with them, so you get rid of the bad part, the bad stuff.
And the last one I'll leave with is how do you handle an argument?
Yeah.
How do you handle? I mean, seriously,
huge.
we all know
Those
that.
are the things that are
Okay,
start
here we go
taking
again.
down the walls. I know we
We
have
have to come back again. We just
No,
give us so much to
do-
talk
okay.
about.
You got to give us
got, the
all
top
the ways
5.
to reach you.
Because
Because we're
Dr. Stephan Poulter, PHAN, StephanPoulter.com, and my book, The X Factor. Yeah,
And there are many, many other books to buy as
yeah,
well.
X
Thank
Factor,
you.
your most recent book, The Art of Successful Failure, which you can always go to Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, and Soul and watch that show as well, because that was a very provocative show. And
So you said you wanted to just leave
Yeah,
5
with
little
those
quick
5
things.
pieces:
5 pieces.
conflict resolution,
Yeah.
and like, do you drop F-bombs? Number 2, what's your language of love? What makes you feel loved? Number 3, how important is sex? Number 4, what did you learn from your parents' marriage? I know. And number 5, do you want a partner or do you want a baby?
Yeah.
Ooh,
These
wow.
are good ones.
These are good. Wow.
Okay, and that
Well,
goes for men, too.
Yeah.
We'll have to revisit
That's
this
not a-
one for sure.
That's not a gender question. That is just a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You ladies are the best.
Oh,
Thank
we just
you.
love having
Seriously,
you.
I could talk all day.
I know, we could talk all day too.
Thank
Love
you.
you. Love you.
All
Thank you,
right.
everybody, for listening.
Thank
We hope
you.
the show gave you some little words of wisdom.
Wisdom and
And-
love is out there. Don't
Yeah.
ever feel
Yeah.
it's not.
Go
No
seek
matter
it.
how much pain you're in, it you move through it and you feel so much better. And Debbie and I are testaments to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Thank you so much, and we will see you.
Yeah,
next
we'll
week.
be back next week at 2 p.m. We'll see you right here. Thanks, everybody. Thank you,
Thank
Stephen.
you.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye,
Again,
everybody.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
The best. Thank you.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.